Hello, my name is Dr. Omari A. Swinson. I'm the Chair and Director of Graduate Studies for the Department of Economics, and I want to welcome you to our annual ODE lecture. The Department of Economics has over 150 undergraduate majors and over 40 graduate students. This year, we expect to graduate 30 majors and 10 graduate students. Our department has two centers, the Center of Excellence in Housing Research and Policy, led by Dr. Kervin, and the Center for Equity and Societal and Sustainable Society, led by Dr. Grooms. We are currently the host of the American Economics Summer Program. Our department has 25 faculty members, some who are highlighted here, who I will now introduce. Dr. Hunt, Dr. Grooms, Dr. Hinkie, Dr. Odularu, Dr. Dinalane, Dr. Mello, Dr. Amini, and Dr. Mipagala. I'm gonna have to remove some spotlights to see if if we could spotlight any other faculty members who are on now. Also, Dr. Baglin, who is the Director of Undergraduate Studies, who will bring greetings towards the end of the program. I'd like to thank my faculty members for coming, who work extremely hard to make us one of the fastest growing majors at the university, as well as one of the fastest growing departments in the university. At this time, I would also like to acknowledge our administrative assistant, Ms. Pritchard, who has been with the department since I've been here. And I've been at Howard for over 15 years. This event is done in conjunction with our Alumni Association, and they will speak a lot later. And our hope is that you will join them once you leave in supporting the department. So at this time, I'd like to welcome the Graduate Dean, Dana Williams, to bring greetings on behalf of the university. Dean Williams.
Thank you so much, Dr. Swinton. And it's so good to see so many of you here. In the same way that parents are not supposed to have favorite children, I would imagine it's the case that deans shouldn't have favorite departments, but I can assure you that economics is among the favorites for some of the reasons that Dr. Swinton has mentioned, and then just because of the work that the alumni really do to make sure that as much support as possible is always present, not just at the undergraduate, but at the graduate level as well. Just an incredible, remarkable faculty doing really important work. So it's my pleasure to bring greetings to you on behalf of the university, particularly the graduate school, to this year's Omicron Delta Epsilon lecture and recognition ceremony. I've already greeted before in the virtual green room our speaker, but want to say a special welcome and thank you. Welcome home always. As we recognize the achievements of scholars in the field tonight and beyond, in this season especially, I'm reminded of the critical role that economists play in shaping policy, informing public debate, addressing the complex challenges facing our world today, and so many other things. At this moment, also in our nation's history, we also need to be clear that we must recognize the urgent need for greater diversity in the field. And economists of color bring essential perspectives that have too often been underrepresented in academic spaces and in policymaking spaces. So I'm also grateful for the work that you all do. Your voices are vital in helping us to understand and address issues like inequality, access, systemic barriers with the depth and nuance that they demand. Supporting and uplifting you all as scholars, as students, as faculty, as mentors, as alum is not only a matter of equity, it is necessary for excellence in the field now and beyond. In short, the work that you do matters. I'm so excited to hear that you are celebrating each other, and we all need a little joy in these days. Your presence in the discipline is incredibly powerful, and I hope that it will continue to be. We're so proud of all that you have accomplished, and we're even more excited to learn more about what's ahead for so many of you. Thank you, Dr. Swinton, for the opportunity really to address the body, and welcome everyone.
Thank you, Dean Williams. My name is Darian Kearney. I am a PhD student in the Department of Economics here at Howard University. And I would like to just once again welcome everybody to the ODE Economics Honor Society lecture series. We are very excited to have you here tonight as part of our continued effort to highlight economists whose work pushes the boundaries of knowledge while addressing the urgent social and economic challenges of our time. It's an honor for me to introduce our distinguished speaker tonight, Dr. Patrick L. Mason, who is the chair and professor of economics at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Dr. Mason is widely respected for his research in labor economics, political economy, race, education, and structural inequality. His work explores critical issues such as racial profiling, income distribution, family structure, the role of technology in shaping labor markets. He is the author of The Economics of Structural Racism and the general editor of the International Encyclopedia of Race and Racism, with nearly 100 publications to his name. Congratulations for that. I had the privilege personally of meeting Dr. Mason earlier this year at the Samuel Z. Westerfield Luncheon during the ASSA 2025 conference held in San Francisco, where he was honored personally with the Samuel Z. Westerfield Award, which is the highest award given by the National Economics Association, to my understanding. This award recognizes Black economists whose work exemplifies academic excellence and a commitment to advancing the economic understanding and the well-being of Black communities. It's rare and deeply meaningful in recognition and awarded only every few years to individuals whose teaching, scholarship, and service truly reflect the highest standards of what it means to be an economist. Dr. Mason has held faculty positions at numerous institutions, including Florida State, Notre Dame, UC Riverside, and Tuskegee University. His leadership extends beyond academia, with service as president of the National Economics Association and longtime involvement in mentoring underrepresented scholars through the AEA SIMGEP program. Raised in Sebring, Florida, his early life work in the fields has shaped a lifelong commitment to social justice and equity, principles that continue to this day. So without further ado, I'd like everybody to join me in welcoming Dr. Patrick L. Mason. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction. And thank you, Dean Williams and Professor Swinton. I am extremely happy to be with you this evening. I'm always glad to, visit with Howard University. It's been a while, see a lot of new faces, but thank you for the opportunity. Let me see, actually, I was trying to pull up my share, but just before I do that, I thought I'd mention that this picture behind me is actually land that was purchased by my ancestors that I will mention briefly in the presentation this evening. This is part of property that the family's been on since 1875. And it's also where I live when I'm not in Massachusetts. Okay. Let me see, find the.
So while Patrick Mason is while he's pulling up the slides, I do want to also make sure I acknowledge the other faculty members who have come on. Dr. Andrea Smythe, Dr. Brown Robertson, Dr. Aceto, and Dr. Booth. You can go ahead, Dr. Mason.
Okay. So that's just the title of the presentation, which is the same actually as the Westerfield and a forthcoming article in the Review of Black Political Economy. And okay, that's just a commercial advertisement. Okay, so the presentation this evening will be an examination of African-American socioeconomic mobility across 4 generations within a single family, where we look first at parents who were born in the 1830s, their children who were born in the 1850s, the grandchildren, the first cousins born between 1876 and 1916. So between during the period of the Nader, and great-grandchildren, second cousins born between 1904 and 1960. Right. And Okay, I promise these are the only two equations in the presentations, but you know, I'm a labor economist, so it's kind of like a two equation minimum. So we will look at a couple of things. One, the education of each group of young people, the education of the children. And basically, if you think about intergenerational mobility and prospective education, you know, the education of the children kind of depends on the education of the parents and some other factors. In this case, we're looking at a family that was, in the language of the time, mulattoes, which increased mobility, whether or not they were married. Actually, most of these people, importantly, were from married two adult households, because that's frequently given as an explanation for why you don't see the same socioeconomic outcomes among African Americans as, say, among whites. But in this case, most of the people were part of married to person households. They were in the South and some other factors. And the thing that, the outcome that's very important is that these children tended to have higher levels of education than the parents. In fact, in terms of this model, alpha 1, not only is it positive, but it's also quite large. And in traditional human capital theory, you would think that, okay, high, if the education of children is greater than the education of parents, then the occupation of the children should be greater than the occupational status of the parents. Because not only do they have the parents' occupational status to give them a boost, but the children have their own much higher levels of education. And the basic outcome in this data is that that really didn't happen, right? The children had far better education than their parents, but it really wasn't until the fourth generation that you started looking at equal or better occupational outcomes, even though there were other things that traditionally labor economists would say would improve occupational mobility, like a willingness to move to opportunity. So these are outcomes that are consistent with stratification economics, which emphasize the importance of race in generating persistent inequality, and de-emphasizes the importance of differences in this often this search for individual deficiencies among African Americans. Okay. Now, there's also besides, you know, my own personal individual interest in this one particular group, one particular family, which is like my family, there is, I think, a valid comparison between the time period that we're looking at and the present, right? Most of the time period that we look at will be on outcomes between 1877 and 1941. That period is eerily similar to the US from 1981 to the present, right? And between the earlier time period, between 1871 and 1941, strong emphasis on a libertarian economy. There's very little government involvement in economic activity, very little regulation, oversight, few social programs. From 1981 to the present, it's been a movement towards that same type of economy. And who knows, maybe within the next couple of weeks, we may be closer back to that. This earlier period, 1877, 1941, was a period of authoritarianism. It was a very violent period for African Americans. Lynchings were, quite prevalent. Riots against African Americans, violence. Of course, most Black people could not vote during this period. And in comparison to the present, especially since 1981, increasing racism. One of the labor market outcomes, especially among men, is that basically there's been stagnation in terms of movement towards equality since the late 70s, early 80s. During the earlier time period, there was massive white immigration, not so much today. Today, immigration from mainly non-white persons coming from Africa, Asia, Caribbean. In both time periods, you had governments who were hostile to labor, hostile to working class organizations, especially unions. Okay. So, like I said, we will look at socioeconomic mobility within one particular family. And this, in fact, turns out to be my maternal family. And in particular, we're interested in, this couple, Charles and Susan Rollins, which were my great-great-grandparents. They were born in the early 1830s. He was born in Florida. She was born in Georgia. And his parents were Thomas and Rachel Rollins, who were from Virginia. Florida became part of the United States very late as far as being a southern state. It was only like in 1821. So a lot of people from Virginia and North Carolina and Tennessee moved into Florida. Now, Charles and Susan, a couple of interests here, were married in 1853. Now, I put married in quotes, right? Because as property, they could not legally marry, right? Nevertheless, they were a couple. And then something happens that's kind of interesting. That's also part of the story. In 1854, Charles begins to hire himself out from his enslaver, right? Where basically he rents himself out to other people, and then he gives a portion of the rent to the person he was enslaved to. It's a very unusual kind of circumstance, right? Where he's not free, but he's not working in the field either. He's not free, but technically he isn't even working in the house, right? He can go around renting himself out to different people. And also during that time period, during the 1850s, when he's able to rent himself out from his enslaver, when Charles and Susan are married, they have 5 children, right? All between 1854 and 1860. This is all before the end of slavery. And they were affiliated with the church, which is today Bethel Baptist Church. This is the oldest Black church in the state of Florida, which was actually founded in the 1850s, which is kind of weird, right? Where you have a church that exists before enslavement comes to an end. Well, the person who was the founder of the church, Reverend James Page, was also kind of an unusual man who was educated and ordained as a minister. And Charles and Susan are affiliated with this church in the 1850s. Now, let me back up for a second too and just emphasize this thing about Charles being able to hire himself out from his enslaver. Besides the fact of the great, human interest in that kind of story, it also tells us something else. He wasn't enslaved because his enslaver had incorrect information or bad information or insufficient information, any kind of information story that's associated with statistical discrimination In fact, quite the opposite. The person he was enslaved to had excellent information on his productive capacity because he was receiving payment from him. I don't know how the person he's enslaved to felt about him, but it wasn't necessarily for him to hate him or dislike him. This is an economic arrangement. He's quite happy to enslave him because it's profitable, right? That racial mistreatment need not proceed from the fact of somebody not liking somebody. It can proceed from the fact that it's profitable to mistreat somebody. In other words, racism can be very instrumental. It exists. In fact, if you're trying to explain why it persists over a long period of time, then we have to ask ourselves, who benefits? If nobody benefited, why would it last so long? Right. So in this case, Charles is renting himself out, and it's an example of the instrumental nature of racism. Now, slavery comes to an end in 1865, right? In Florida, it's May 20th. I know we have a national holiday now, Juneteenth, right? June 19th. That's when slavery came to an end in Texas. In Florida, it came to an end May 20th, 1865. When enslavement comes to an end, the Freedmen's Bureau established a bank. Charles Rollins is the first person to open an account at that bank. And you have to, that those deposits have a lot of biographical information. He comes out of enslavement. He opens a bank account in 1866. So this is a year out of enslavement. He's also a trustee for the Bethel Baptist Sunday School. So Bethel Baptist, it was a church, and it had a school for religious education, but it also had schools to provide general teaching people how to read and write and do basic math. Charles is a trustee for the Bethel Baptist Sunday School. In 1867, he registered to vote. He's a sharecropper for a period in 1868, where he and his family rent 60 acres of land. Those sharecropping contracts were written by the Freedmen's Bureau, and a huge proportion of the contract, half or 2/3 would go to the landowner. So that was the early spring of 1868. By August of 1868, his family goes from being sharecroppers to being owners of property. They own 5 acres of land. So quite rapidly, right, slavery comes to an end in 1865, May 20th. Within 3 years, he has a bank account. He's trustee for a very important religious organization, which, by the way, remains one of the 2 dominant Black churches in Tallahassee to this day. He registered to vote. He finally owns his own property, 5 acres of land, which also remains in the family to this day. Right, so from 1868 to the present. Then a year later, in 1869, he's a founding officer of the Florida Bethlehem Baptist Association. This is an important organization. It becomes the springboard for forming the Florida General Baptist Convention, an organization that exists today. It becomes a model for the National Baptist Convention USA, which is a major, major Black organization to this day. This is also the organization that Florida Memorial University grows out of. They sought to establish a college to educate ministers, and eventually that grows into what we now know as Florida Memorial College. starting out in North Florida and eventually moving to Miami. So he's participating. So not only is he moving up individually, but he's participating, he and the wife are participating in establishing community organizations. Between 1869 and 1870, the children also have accounts at the Freedmen's Bureau. He testifies to a circuit court grand jury in 1871, and this is related to Ku Klux Klan activity in northern Florida. During this time, Florida was an extremely violent place. And a lot of the violence was directed at people like Charles Rollins, men and women who sought to be politically and economically independent. Okay. A few years later, he adds on to the property on Old Bainbridge Road. He accumulated about $1,200 in savings. And then in the mid to early 70s, he enters politics as a Leon County commissioner, right? And starts to purchase land, right? He purchases land on a tax deed on Adams Street. So if you're not familiar with Tallahassee, this is like near what's today downtown Tallahassee. So it's a great location. And then the picture of the land that I showed you out in the open field, he settles on that land in 1875. He becomes a supervisor of elections for the 1876 election. And if you're not familiar with the election, that's the election where it's quite controversial as to who won. Eventually, they put together a commission of Democrats and Republicans. Republicans get the presidency, but the Democrats get to return the power in the South. At the same time, he's a founder of another organization, the Mount Olive Lodge Number 5. It was called Lodge. I don't know why it was called Number 5. It was the first Prince Hall Masonic Lodge in the state of Florida. That lodge still exists to this very day in the Frenchtown community in Tallahassee. And he sells off the Adams Street property in 1877. So he basically flips the property. So this is a portrait of a family that for the first 12 years out of enslavement, they're owning a home, they're accumulating property, they're building, participating in the life of the community, building institutions, extremely involved in the political process. One would think that this is a great foundation to provide enormous opportunities for their children. Even during the midst of Jim Crow, right? So the family continues to do well for a while. Charles is a representative in the state assembly for Florida, right? It's kind of like the House of Representatives. He is a trustee for Lincoln Academy, which is the first high school for African Americans in the state of Florida. I think that high school came into existence in 1867, and it remained in existence until 1967 with desegregation. This is a high school that my mother graduated from, and many other family members from Lincoln Academy. All right, the building is still there in Tallahassee. But then Florida adopts the Jim Crow Constitution in 1885. Nevertheless, during that same year, both Charles and Susan are treasurers for a civic or religious organization. And Charles finally gets a land patent for that land that he claimed in 1875. A land patent means that you're the first owner of land. Technically, he wasn't the first owner. I mean, the Native Americans were there, so he's like the first non-Native American owner. Land patent is different from a deed, right? Every deed has to go back to a land patent. He's chair of the Leon County Republicans. At that time, you know, most African Americans were Republicans. He's a delegate to the Republican State Convention in 1888. I mean, they're still trying to found organizations. He's an organizer of the Farmers Institute, which is affiliated with Florida A&M. He is an organizer for the Florida Negro Business League, which is affiliated with Booker T. Washington, which in some ways is kind of surprising, right? Booker T. Washington did not kind of spoke against involvement in politics, but the people in the Florida Negro Business League were very much involved with politics, even though this is a Booker T. Washington affiliated organization. And even though it's in the midst of Jim Crow, he continues to add to the land on Lake Jackson. Finally, Charles Rawlins dies during the Great Spanish Flu influenza, right, in 1919. Actually, this is one of the things that created my awareness of what happens during pandemics. Right? If your family was in America during this time, you probably had somebody die during this flu outbreak. Nevertheless, within a couple of months after he dies, his youngest son adds to the land that's on Lake Jackson. So now this property is like 132 acres. So again, when you look at this couple who were formerly enslaved during the time period between 1865 and when he dies in 1919, Susan died in 1902, they're accumulating property, right? Basically, they had two estates. They had one family estate in town that was like 5 1/3 acres, and another family estate out in the country, as we call it, sitting on a lake, 132 acres. They helped their children get educated. They were part of the leadership group in Tallahassee. They're founding all these important social and economic groups. They're involved in the political process. One would think that children from such a family would do quite well socially and economically. But it gets complicated. All right, I'm trying to move this out the way. Okay. So Thomas and Rachel, those were the parents of, okay. For some reason, this doesn't want to act right. All right, let me see if I can. Okay, that's where I want to get. So Thomas and Rachel, those are the parents of Charles. They were enslaved, they were illiterate. Charles and Susan were born during enslavement, right? 1832, 1835, respectively. He can read and write. She can read, but not sure if she ever learned how to write. And she could do basic math because she was a treasurer for an organization. Charles, occupationally, is a carpenter, a politician. Susan is actually a midwife, an occupation she held during slavery and continued to hold after enslavement. And there's a farm in town, and the property, the larger, this is the 5 1/3 acres in town. They farmed that and actually grew the first Cuban tobacco in Florida. And they have a dairy farm out, and that's the 132 acres. So they're farmers and they also own a dairy. And they had limited education. These are their 5 children, and also a niece that resided with them after slavery. They're all able to read and write. Only the youngest child where I could find any evidence that he actually spent any time in school. The oldest child moves to Boston, where he's a porter in a hotel, and eventually becomes a letter carrier, right? Which is a big deal with the post office at that time, right? So he got out of Tallahassee and moved to Boston. The next oldest child was actually a daughter. She stayed in Tallahassee. The third child is a waiter at a luxury hotel. And I have a star beside that because the owner of that hotel was actually a white man who started out with rather humble origins. But he's able to rise up from his status. I think he grew up on a farm, to being the owner of a luxury hotel. These two children of Charles and Susan, actually, this was Noah, and he had a brother named Charles. So these are two brothers who moved to Boston. They moved, I'm not sure the exact miles from Tallahassee to Boston. It's probably a 21, 22-hour car drive. So how many hours is that? They moved essentially all the way across country. They're hardworking. They come from, quote unquote, a good family with a strong work effort, emphasizing achievement and education. And they have some advancement. But they never get to the point where they can own a luxury hotel. So Boston is certainly better than Tallahassee during this time period. But Boston is not free of racism. And hard work, love of education, strong family, so two-parent family, great family functioning, a desire to get ahead and to achieve, and a willingness to move from Tallahassee to Boston. All of that is not sufficient to allow them to achieve the same level of occupational mobility as this white gentleman who actually owned the hotel. I mean, the white gentleman who owns the hotel is 33 years old when he becomes the owner. Fourth child dies young. The fifth child really stays in Tallahassee and becomes a dairy owner, right? But their education is probably better than their parents. The fifth child becomes a dairy owner. He's a dairy owner because his parents already own the dairy. So a huge chunk of this he inherits, about 2/3, and he purchased a third 2 months after his father died. Well, where did he get the money to purchase from? He got it from his father. So that basically, none of them achieved greater occupational mobility than their parents. Despite the tremendous, I mean, they start out with great, solid family background, great social capital. They know everybody in Tallahassee, quote unquote, everybody, they're connected with all the prominent organizations. There's some educational improvement, but you don't see the equivalent gain in occupation. Okay. Then this goes the next step and say, okay, let's look at the grandchildren of Charles and Susan. So these are these are the children, child 1, 2, 3, then 4 and 5 are in the next slide. And when they were born and their education level. And then this is the children of the children. So these are grandchildren of Charles and Susan. All right. For the first set of grandchildren, they're born between the 1880s and 1890s. That is a huge jump in education. They're born during the middle of the nadir. They're born at a time period when African Americans' civil rights, human rights are being denied. People are getting lynched. It is intensely violent. And yet, they do pretty well educationally. That's an average, think of about almost 9 years of education between the three of them. The children of the second child, so the second set of grandchildren, right? They average, it looks like about 8 years of education. Relative to their parents who could just read and write. There's a big difference between getting 8 years of education and say only having 1 or 2 years of education. That's a big jump. For this third set of grandchildren, right? Child number 1, this is one of the ones that moved to Boston. Child number 3 also moved to Boston. He had like 9 children. 1, 2, 3, 4 are high school graduates out of the 9. 2 of them didn't graduate from high school, but they make it to 10th grade. The others made it to at least middle school. It's a long way from just being able to read or write, just basic rudimentary education, to being a high school graduate. Again, they're born in the 1890s. They're born during a period of immense hostility to Black people. Yet, they're doing well educationally. This is better than most white families were doing at the time. 4th set of grandchildren. Again, 3 high school graduates. Most of the others, middle school, high school, they're doing well. The last set of children born to the niece that was with them didn't do as well in school. The overall portrait is that the grandchildren made a tremendous leap in terms of their education. The basic story behind human capital theory is that if you get a very high level, that occupational outcomes, wage outcomes are influenced heavily by education. So we would expect a big leap in occupational status as well. We'll hold off on that for a moment. Not only were they achieving educationally, they're moving, right? Child 1 moves from Tallahassee to Boston. He moves in 1880. This is before the Great Migration. The Great Migration essentially starts like after 1910. So 30 years before that, he moves to Boston. Child number 3 also moves to Boston around the same time. Child number 2, the children of them, one of the children moves from Tallahassee to Jacksonville to Pensacola to Tampa. So he doesn't leave the South, but Jacksonville was the biggest city in Florida at the time. I think Pensacola was the second largest, and Tampa was just kind of getting started. He's moving around Florida in search of opportunity. Again, basic human capital theory, especially, there's a very famous paper by Finus Welch and James Smith back in the late 80s, looking at at that time, there's a lot of progress made in terms of African Americans reducing wage inequality. And Smith and Welch and Smith's basic explanation for the improvement was African Americans closed the education gap and they were willing to move to opportunity. Well, this group of people closed the education gap and they're willing to move great distances. If you're not familiar with Florida, it's a long way from Tallahassee to Tampa. I mean, from Tallahassee to Jacksonville is 180 miles going east. Tallahassee to Pensacola is 180 miles going in the other direction. Tampa is about 240 miles. These are some more, so the fifth child, these are some movements by his children. From Tallahassee to Tampa, and this child eventually moves to Pennsylvania. There's another one who moves from Tallahassee to South Orange, New Jersey, Tallahassee to Jacksonville. This one moves from Tallahassee to Fort Myers, back to Tallahassee, Tallahassee to South Orange, New Jersey. So these movements are all taking place during the era of the Great Migration and urbanization. Even the niece, her children are willing to move from Tallahassee to Jacksonville. So from a human capital's perspective, an intact two-parent family with an emphasis on achievement and motivation, strong social capital because they helped found a lot of the basic communities in the city, a willingness to relocate, and great educational increase. So we can compare then the occupational outcomes. So the children, right? These are the children of Charles and Susan. Child 1 is a porter and a letter carrier. Child 2 is a farmer. Well, their parents were farmers. Child 3 becomes a waiter. This is a 1940 occupation of the grandchildren. Elevator lady, a couple of musicians, actually. They were professional musicians, but while they were also musicians, you know, musicians don't always pay a lot. They worked as elevator man, chauffeur, elevator operator. Child 2 did have grandchild. Well, one of the grandchildren of the second child did become a farmer of 100 acres. This grandchild is a cigar maker and janitor. This is probably the most successful of these first cousins. This one became a farmer, 350-acre dairy farm in the AME Bishop. But the others, a packer, this was with the Work Progress Administration, sewer, homemaker, chambermaid, hotel, stitcher, it's a sewer, elevator operators, busboy, railroad porter. Pretty decent set of occupations, but it's really not occupations in line with the educational achievement and what you would have expected given their parents' achievements. And even if we look at the fifth child, and you know, he had 9 children, again, farm worker, domestic worker in a private home, farmer. The ones who were farming, right, this acreage is stuff they inherited from their father, who got it from his father, right? Domestic worker, painter. These occupations, the occupational changes do not match the educational changes. And this is a very libertarian time period. You know, there's this idea, popular with human capital theory is not popular with me, that competition will break down barriers, right? That market outcomes, labor market outcomes are driven by individual ability and acquired ability, acquired education, and, you know, attitude towards work. Well, this group of people had all of that. Strong family background, positive attitude about work and accumulation, lots of social capital. But the occupational status does not match the background that they start out with or their own educational achievements. And this goes even further to looking at the great-grandchildren. So these are the second cousins of the descendants of Charles and Susan. These are the children of the grandchildren. And the occupational status begins to improve, right? Because now you have people who are graduates from college. So there's social workers, electrical engineer. This person was a singer, activist, organizer, municipal service worker, stenographer, so that's a skilled occupation, a seaman who also was an electrical engineer, electrician. So these are beginning to be better occupations, but still, I mean, and these were the younger ones, where now you begin to get a registered nurse, 3 master's degrees, and associated occupations. One person with a BA was an auto mechanics teacher at Grambling for many years. But look at when these people were born, right? Some of them as late as 1940, right? This is graduates. So they're born in the 30s. So they would have been entering the labor market in, depending on when they were born here, the late 40s, early 50s. That's a long time from when their great-grandparents came out of enslavement in 1865 to finally get to occupations that are approaching where their great-grandparents were. And of course, there's one person born in 1950, so this is a second cousin who obtains a PhD and is a psychologist, which is a clear educational improvement and occupational improvement over previous generations. But it's only one PhD out of all these second cousins. And again, this person was born in 1950. So this person was born as the civil rights movement was kicking in the high gear. And finally, I'm not able to really document how important this is, but it seems to me it had to be important. Thomas Rollins, the father of Charles, was a mulatto. His wife was a mulatto. So Thomas was a mulatto. Susan was a mulatto. So all their children were mulattoes. And in fact, they all married mulatto women, except for child number 5 here. He married a social mulatto. Okay, child number 5 is actually my great-grandfather. And the woman that he married was not a mulatto, but she was from a family that had been in Florida since the 1700s and was quite prominent. Her family had many years of freedom, so it was not a typical Black family. How much did that, how much, I don't know, I'm not able to quantify it. But Howard Bodenhorn, who I think is at the University of South Carolina, looked at the impact of mulatto status on Black economic achievement in the North and the South, and it was an important factor. So, conclusion. Charles' ability to hire himself out to function as an entrepreneur, to engage in self-help, established that he wasn't enslaved because of they may have been prejudice. He wasn't enslaved because he came from a dysfunctional family. He wasn't enslaved because he was lazy. He was enslaved because it was profitable. Racial inequality has instrumental motives as to inexplicable taste or insufficient information. This family did a lot in terms of not only being a part of important social organizations, they helped create social capital. Another thing is, a rising tide may not lift all boats. Right? There was a lot of growth during this time period. Didn't necessarily help Black families. Capitalist competition may create inequality of opportunity and inequality of outcomes rather than creating a level playing field. We have this tendency to believe that, okay, all we need is more competition. Well, more competition might create more inequality. If I remember Adam Smith correctly, in fact, he sort of connected competition and inequality together. There's also help with the case for reparations. This family did not receive reparations, and maybe that would have helped even more in terms of occupational enslavement. They didn't receive reparations for enslavement or Jim Crow. And yet they were subject to authoritarian policies during those two eras. So in the end, understanding the unique elements of African-American intergenerational mobility is necessary for an accurate understanding of the political economy of capitalism. We are an exception, but I think when you study African-Americans' attempt at intergenerational mobility, it actually lays bare on how the process works. Okay, so I stopped there. Hopefully I didn't go too far over time.
So at this time, the president of the Abraham Harris Society is going to ask you a couple of questions, and if we have any questions from the floor, we might be able to take one or two. Carson, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Dr. Swinton. Hello, everyone. My name is Carson Smith. I am a junior honors international affairs and economics double major with a minor in Spanish from Houston, Texas. And I'd first, of course, like to applaud our amazing speaker. It is such a refreshing thing to hear this perspective, especially in a time period that we're in right now, where generational wealth is oftentimes discredited. And we just truly appreciate you for your advice, your intellect, and also your time, most importantly. Um, I'd like to start off, of course, with my own personal question, and then I'd love to open the floor to our attendees. So, in the very beginning, you mentioned Mr. Charles Rowlands and his land accumulation during the Jim Crow era that totaled up to 132 acres by 1919. According to my notes, of course, please correct me if I'm wrong. I was wondering how might we use this maybe as a case study to integrate the limits of like asset building for Black families under like radicalized legal and institutional barriers. And specifically, I really wanted to know, or at least understand your opinion maybe, on how might we challenge this model that assumes like equal returns per se to like capital or land ownership across, racial groups, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I definitely don't, I mean, the white landowners at the time owned much more land, right? And so in fact, this picture in the background is the land that was acquired in 1875 initially, and the last piece of it was 1919. During that time, they were able to farm it, to have a dairy, but essentially the dairy comes to an end in 1946 because they don't have enough capital and the land isn't large enough to mechanize. All right. So in fact, this very field, my grandfather used to plow that field with a mule. All right. While everybody else, the big farms in the 1940s were becoming mechanized. So in addition to the capital in order to get the new technology in order to have the same rate of return as bigger farmers, another unstated element here is the role of local officials. The tax assessor or the tax appraiser, the tax collector, the county judges, the zoning people, and the police are major actors in wealth accumulation at the local level. It's an element of the process that's not sufficiently appreciated. At one point, African Americans in the South owned something like 16 million acres of air property. That's down to about 500,000 acres today. And in order to tell that story of what happened, you have to look at what did the people do in the zoning office? What did they do in the tax collector's office? What did they do in the tax appraiser's office? How did judges rule? Who did the police help? Those 5 offices are very important for understanding the land loss. And loss of that land was a major blow. A major, major blow. Well, I don't know if I successfully answered your question, but.
Absolutely, actually, thank you. I know I have a million and one questions, but I would love to open the floor if people could raise their hands if they have any questions. Caitlin, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Professor Mason. I first just wanted to say that this presentation has been incredibly impactful for me. On my mother's side, she's from the Virgin Islands. We've been on the same piece of property for at least 8 generations. On my father's side, we've been on the same piece of property for 8 generations in Tallahassee, Florida, on Old Bainbridge Road. So during your presentation, well, my father was Darrell Drew, his father was Doris Drew, and his mother was Mary Richardson, then Drew. So during the course of this presentation, I was texting a transcript to my aunt about everything. She let me know that her husband, she's a whitehead now, her husband knew of your family and their prolific history. So she had a question for me to ask you. How does competition compound inequality for Black people?
In the process of competition, the first thing when I have to say about competition is that when we think about competition, we have to take out of our heads the definition of competition that's given in principles of econ textbooks and intermediate microeconomics textbooks, where competition, is the small atomistic firms. No individual is large, no firm is large, identical product, everybody has the same information, no market power, uniform price. In fact, that's like really the absence of competition, right? You take an action and nobody responds, right? You don't have to worry about reaction because everybody's small. No, take that out of your head. Competition is about trying to achieve advantage over other people. And one of the things that happens is that there are 2 things that I think that are important to remember. One is whether or not a capitalist economy can provide a job to everybody who's willing and able to work. And the answer to that most of the time is no. The economy will not provide enough jobs for everybody who's willing and able to work. If there are 170 million people looking for a job, then the economy may only provide enough 140 million jobs. That means that 30 million people are going to be jobless regardless of their education, their work ethic, their family come to, etc. So what determines whether or not they will be jobless? Well, one thing is, who's doing the hiring? What are the other members of the labor force who are in the job? So connections to the process, connections to people who are embedded in positions of power and authority is one way competition plays out. The other question is whether or not people of identical skill, ability, talent, etc., will receive an identical wage in the market. Well, in a perfectly competitive environment, the answer to that is yes. But a perfectly competitive environment won't tell you anything about capitalism. The answer to that question is no. People of equal ability will not necessarily receive equal pay under very competitive conditions. Different firms have different managerial strategies. Some firms pay higher wages to motivate their workers to work hard, and they make profit that way. Some firms pay low wages because they don't care about high turnover. They make profit that way. So again, it comes down to access to people in positions of power and authority and the role of the worker manager identity match. Another thing, so like textbook case, firms are just firms, workers are just workers, consumers are just, they don't have a racial identity. They don't have a gender identity. They're just generic workers or generic consumers or generic firm. Well, no. I mean, the police aren't just generic police. There are differences in Black police and white police. Not just in terms of how they treat, but there are differences in how they police based on their racial identity. There are differences in how managers interact. So that racial identity match between the manager and the worker matters. It can affect your productivity. So again, we think about productivity as being, again, if you standard kind of textbook way of thinking about it, is that productivity is attached to an individual, and then you try and find a job that pays you according to your productivity. Well, your productivity can be increased or decreased according to the management you're associated with. So recent article I read in the Quarterly Journal of Economics, very orthodox economics, very mainstream, talked about how managers allocate their time to their favorite workers. More managers control vital resources. They control information. They control knowledge of how to get a promotion. They control organizational resources. Managers make decisions on who they will allocate those resources to. If you are the beneficiary of managerial resources, your productivity will go up and you're more likely to get promoted and get higher pay. So all those things are a part of how the competitive process plays out. There's lots of competition for jobs because all jobs do not pay the same. There's competition for work because the economy can't provide enough jobs to everybody who's willing and able to work. One of my favorite examples is like, I used to teach sports economics. And if you play in baseball, there's one team that you definitely want to play for. You want to be a Yankee. Because the Yankees pay higher wages than everybody else because they have a simple solution. We're going to pay you more money than everybody else in baseball, and we expect you to bring a World Series championship. It's just that simple. Every baseball team does not have that approach. Some pay low wages because they make a lot of money that way. So different companies have different strategies, and that's part of competition.
Thank you so much for your response, sir. I was just informed that we only have time for one more question, so I would like to take Ms. Hull's question, and you will be our final questioner.
Thank you very much, Professor Mason. I think you've done an outstanding job in covering the waterfront. It turns out that I'm the first PhD in economics from Howard University, so I have a real interest in what you're doing. I think you've covered the waterfront with respect to several issues that you've drawn attention to, and have done them very, very nicely. You're not likely to get much competition on these. But I'm a little bit concerned about the issue of competition. I happen to have spent a fair amount of time, in fact, evaluating competition at various levels. And I draw attention to the Securities and Exchange CF14A filing, which is done each year. There's a table in the back there. Every year it shows up, and it shows the compensation at different levels. At the base case, there's a base salary. Then next you have the earnings based upon the incentives that you've gotten from options trading, which is nearly always double the amount that you make on basic salary. And then there's another area in the distance which deals with the duration on the reservation. How long has the executive worked in that area? That matters a great deal in terms of competition. I want to believe that we can do a better job with respect to motivating work ethics and actually trying to focus on the production of goods and services that are highly valued in the global marketplace. I fear that that is not the case in many places, especially in South America, Latin America, and the Caribbean, which I have some familiarity with. But the thing is that to keep in mind that if you look at that table, you will see every year the same pattern. The top executives right there, they're vigorously engaged in competition. Why? Because there's another person next door is trying to get rid of them to occupy that space. So the compensation level that he gets is based largely upon how well he does in that job and the value of the goods and services that he's producing in the workplace. Things like, you see this, the work, that kind of work is being done by all of these technology companies around. And if you look at them very carefully, and the person is at the top level, he's always, involved in producing some goods and services that are highly valued. Highly valued means it's the kind of parts that you purchase for, an automobile in the electrical age that we're dealing with, and other areas like that. That's where the money is being earned, and I'd like to see our people earning more of that and doing well. But to get there, they've got to compete vigorously. That they're producing the most efficient items that are being offered in the workplace, offering those for sale, and actually sharing the expertise that they've gathered from the pattern from their brothers and sisters they left behind. Because every last one of them that makes it at the top will always start out on getting a job. I have to build this house for my mom, who raised me from birth. They're tied very, very closely to those persons who raised them. So thanks again for an outstanding presentation. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Okay, thank you. So I didn't get a question there, but that was an interesting process that you described. And certainly, producing high value is high value. Being very productive is one way of raising wages. I wouldn't argue with that. But even if you just look at people who are high value producers, they don't all get paid the same. And then there's a question, like one of my earliest studies, kind of back in the 90s, over 30 years old now, was looking at wage differences among men. And the big driver of the differences wasn't different pay for doing the same work. The big driver was unequal access to high-paying jobs. So it wasn't different pay for the same work, it was different work. right? Is the ability to get into those jobs where you can produce a very high value and get very high pay.
All right. I want to thank Dr. Mason for his uh, interesting talk. If you could join me, please giving him a hand. Huda sent him a plaque. Dr. Mason, can you hold the plaque up if you have it near you? You're on mute.
I'm sorry, I do not have the plaque. I think it went to my address in Florida.
No, that's fine. Okay, but they did send a plaque to him, and would also like to thank Carson for her excellent job during moderation. Thank you again, Patrick.
All right, thank you. I very much enjoyed it. This is fantastic. So thank you.
So next up, we're gonna have our award presentations. We're gonna first start with Dr. Charles Thorpe, who is gonna do a presentation on behalf of emeritus faculty member Dr. Vincent McDonald. Dr. Thorpe.
Good evening. As Dr. Swinton said, I have the distinct pleasure of presenting the award that's entitled the Vincent R. McDonald Senior Recognition Award. This award is presented by the Howard University Economics Department Alumni Association. We provide a monetary award to a deserving and outstanding student, undergraduate student, who is majoring in economics. The purpose of the award is to recognize a senior who has excelled in rigorous economics courses and demonstrated leadership ability, participated in community service activities, and has proven to be an overall outstanding student matriculating at Howard University. This annual award is funded by Dr. Vincent McDonald. He's a professor emeritus from Howard University, Department of Economics, and HUDA. So he has done this award since the year 2004 was the first year doing this award. The amount of the award is about right now $500, and we have some established criteria from which we go to select the award from the various applicants. We utilize the grade point average, accomplishments, leadership experience, community service, membership in honor societies or professional organizations, and we do get from the individuals some sort of essay indicating why they would like to receive this, or why they should receive this particular award. So this year, our award winner is none other than Somotochen Yugo. He's our winner for this year. And he is ready. He's already ready to display his award. But I just let's say a little bit about what Somotochen did. He has a grade point average of almost 4%, 3.97 to be exact. And he has participated in a variety of internships and gained a lot of experience in this arena. He worked at the Bank of America, Howard University, Goldman Sachs, Deloitte, just to name a few. But he has a knack for doing analytic work at every opportunity he gets. So we want to take this opportunity to congratulate Mr. Hugo on his achievements. So please display the award at this time, sir. Thank you. And just let's join give him a hand. Let's see. So thank you, sir, and all the best in your future endeavors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations to our award winner, and we'd like to again say a word of appreciation to Dr. Vincent McDonald, who has continually supported the department even after his retirement. Next up is going to be a presentation by Aji to our graduate travel award recipient. Aji, whenever you're ready.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Swinton, and thank you for joining us, and thank you for continuing to support the the economics department. My name is Aji Fatou Jain. I am a Howard PhD class of 2018 graduate and the chair of the HUDA Awards Committee. Tonight, I have the honor to present the Dr. William E. Spriggs Graduate Travel Stipend Award. And it used to be known as just the GTA Award, but we decided to honor our late professor, Dr. Spriggs, and be able to name this award after him, since he really pushed a lot of our students to do research and present at conferences. So this was a really, really a huge accomplishment for us to do. Every year, HUDA, in collaboration with the graduate school, thanks to Dr. Linda Jones, who will be honored later tonight, offers an award to a graduate student to cover expenses to attend the annual meetings of the American Economics Association, where activities and sessions are also hosted by the National Economic Association. We select a student based on GPA, accomplishments, research experience, among other related experiences. It is an honor for me to present the 2024-2025 GTA recipient, Darian Kearney, who you've already heard from this earlier today, introducing our excellent speaker, Dr. Mason. Darren shared his experience in San Francisco in a Sway article that I will drop in the chat for people to check out later. Darian's research interests focus on how racially motivated trauma impacts financial decision-making and labor market outcomes, with particular emphasis on financial trauma and labor market discrimination. Darian shared that the award allowed him to expand his academic network and reaffirm his research interests in promoting economic equity. Darian, HUDA is very proud of your accomplishments and look forward to your future research and other career endeavors. Thank you, everyone. And Darian, if you would like to show your plaque that you received. Kind of blurry.
You got to take the blur off, Darian.
Yeah.
Please join me in congratulating Darian on his travel award, and hopefully he'll get the blur off in a couple of seconds. Or maybe not. It's okay. We can see the bottom of it, Darian.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Congrats, Darian.
Sorry, I don't know why I'm struggling to find the blur. But anyways, thank you.
So the next presentation will be Dr. Hunt, and he will be presenting the new inductees into the Omicron Delta Epsilon, the Honor Society for Economics. Dr. Hunt?
Thank you very much, Professor, Chair of our department. Good evening, everyone. As you know, ODE is an honor society that is well represented across the United States and around the world. And we look forward every year to allowing our graduating students who would have met the minimum requirements to join our association. And this international association gives people kind of building some connections in our community of young economists. And as I said, because we have access to many economists across the country and around the world, this is something useful for our students to be a part of. So this year, we had a good privilege of including in our new list of ODE members about 10 students and a professor in our department who assists me as my deputy ODE advisor. Without further ado, I'd just like to list the names of the persons who are now being made members of ODE or our branch here at Howard University, the Beta Group. Let me just tell you some of the names. First, it's Ari Kamau, Tatiana Dayambeni, Whitney Grant, Marcus Spriggs, Maya Brown Lofty, Kathleen Archibald Drew, Peyton Garcia, Shanil McKnight, Henning Adeline Yon, Grant Fortune, and Dr. Odoruru. I'd like you all to welcome them by giving them a round of applause in being part of our membership here at Howard University. And also, I'd like to mention also, we also have a committee who assists me in organizing our work in ODE. And I'd just like to mention that we just have a new president, Kathleen Archibald-Drew. She spoke earlier on this evening as part of our presentation. We have 2 vacancies on our committee, one for secretary and a vice president as well. So we hope to have those positions filled by in fall of this coming year. And those are my announcements for those persons joining ODE this year. Thank you very much.
Congratulations to all the new inductees. And this year, the department is doing something in conjunction with HUDA that's slightly different, that we're inviting all of the inductees to ODE to attend the graduates reception that we're having on May 1st, because this used to be a dinner before the pandemic. And so we're going to treat them if they're available on May 1st. And we'll get that information to Dr. Hunt to share with them so that they come out and share all our students who will be graduating this upcoming year. So the next presenter is Hazel Robinson, who is the president of the Alumni Association, and she now has the floor. Hazel.
Oh, thank you, Professor Swinton. I want to share my screen. So can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Hazel Robinson, president of the Howard University Economics Department Alumni Association. We were established back in 2001, but in my presentation, I will go into more detail. Of course, tonight I have the great honor of saluting my classmate, my college mate back in the 70s. We're going to salute her because she's retiring real soon at the end of the school year. And so I'm going to move to the next slide. Okay. Linda, I know you're in the room. So women who change the world. There are women who make things better simply by showing up. There are women who make things happen. There are women who make their way. There are women who make a difference and women who makes us smile. There are women of wit and wisdom who through strength and courage make it through. These are women who change the world every day, women like you. And the picture you're seeing, this is one of the homecomings that Linda and I attended following the breakfast that the graduate school had gave earlier that day. Do another slide. Okay, Linda, you are that woman. You changed the world of students who you helped with financial aid, getting a class or whatever they needed. I will never forget how I visited your office for the first time. And I had the pleasure of seeing pictures of all the students you helped. And I believe you had some of the thank you letters and cards that they sent to you. Right then, I knew that you loved your job. It was not even a job, but a passion. And I could see the love and joy of how you cared for students. You changed HUDA world as well. You opened doors and you made opportunities for us. We learned early that Linda was a great source of information and she knew Howard like the back of her hand. She knew how to navigate and move in the Howard spaces. She knew how to make things happen. Linda served as our public relations chair and she definitely promoted us, especially when Dean Donaldson in the School of Liberal Arts later renamed the College of Arts and Sciences. Linda served as our press agent, and because of Linda, I believe people have gotten to know about HUDA. And when the College of Arts and Sciences will have special events or career days, and they needed alumni, all Linda had to do but just called and we were there. I remember back in 2006 when I was stationed in Kuwait for the war. I remember getting a email, I believe from Dr. Gwinnell Bass, and she was telling me how the College of Arts and Sciences were treating them, Huda, so royally, especially during homecoming. Brunch, program favors, gifts. I could barely believe what I was reading. And I kept saying to myself, is she sure? And then I thought Linda got us in. And then I realized Linda had a hand in this. I know that Linda was very valuable, is very valuable to the department. And when she could help, she did. And she's still helping. And she's helping us with planning the graduate reception. It is because of her that the graduate school pays for our Dr. William E. Spriggs Graduate Travel Award winning. With us paying and with Dr. Mike Donald paying for his award and also the graduate school, it's pretty much a trip that's paid for completely. I'm sure there were several occasions she took care of the department. And Linda is a lot of fun. She loves doing fun things like attending homecoming. And this is a group picture of the group just before the homecoming parade. And because Dean Williams was there. Linda, you are a special person, a rare gem. And we are so happy that you are one of us, a member of the Howard University Economics Department Alumni Association. We thank God for your life, your light, your passion, generosity, dedication, commitment, and hard work for the department and Huda. We appreciate you and happy retirement. And I want to close with this poem. Thank you, Linda, for being a blessing in our lives. We want to take a moment and let you know how much you are loved and appreciated. You are truly a God-sent angel to us, and we are more grateful to you than words can express. Few people possess the considerate, unselfish, loving heart that you have, and even few are willing to give so much of themselves. We thank you for your kindness and for being the wonderful, amazing person you are. We are blessed. We are blessed to have you in our lives. God bless you, and I want to present this token of love to you. Okay, I want to just stop sharing. Did you spotlight, Linda? Okay.
Thank you, Huda. Thank you, Economics Department. It's just been a joy serving Howard University for 35 years. Regardless of all of the obstacles and the challenges that we have, you forget everything on commencement day. Because when we see you walk down the red carpet and with your cap and your gown, it just makes everything worth it. So it's been a pleasure. I'm looking forward to my next chapter in my life. I'm excited about it. I just could not do this with a better group of people. It's been wonderful. And I thank you all for inviting me to Huda. And it's been just a wonderful experience. Love all of you. And I'm about to send this announcement out so I can tell you, Mr. Darian Kearney, congratulations, because you are a Just Julian for next academic year.
Congratulations. And again, join me in giving Linda Jones a very hearty welcome. She's always been extra supportive of the department, and especially students who are in graduate school who have had issues and have had things not necessarily go as smoothly as they could have. Linda has always been in our corner and helping us figure out things. So if you are a graduate student and you get funding, or you're a graduate student and you eventually graduate, Linda Jones has been involved in that. So we're going to be missed. The department's going to miss you. I know Huda's going to miss you, but congratulations and best wishes as you move forward.
Thank you.
And so we have come to the end of our program.
Wait, I have a
Oh.
few more slides.
Sorry. Oh, my bad.
I
Okay,
just-
go ahead, Hazel.
Let me, I try not to go too long.
Okay.
Okay. So I want to go from the current slide. I guess. Okay. Okay, so I just wanted to people to know how we used to do it when we met in person. We'll actually make a nice flyer and we highlight the speaker. And this was back in April of 2019 when we was actually in person. We had the ODE dinner lecture at the Blackburn Center. And you could see one thing I want to draw your attention to is the price. The price there. You had to actually pay because we had to cover the cost of the food. $65 in advance, $75 at the door. And this is the lieutenant governor at the time, and we honor him. And he's one of my classmates too. So the class of 79 is a strong class. And then now it's 2025, and now we're virtual, and you go to Eventbrite, you get a ticket, you get a Zoom link, and we're here tonight. This is ODE 2019, but the students in attendance with our the chairman and the lieutenant governor. And because the orders is in the front and we're all sitting at the table admiring them taking the picture. And of course, this is leadership. Dr. Swinton and Lieutenant Governor Boyd Rutherford. Now, I want to put y'all thinking caps on. Do you know these professors? Do you know these professors? And since I can't see nobody, if you know them, just shout it out. The gentleman
Dr.
to
Palmer.
the left.
Dr.
Yes,
Palmer.
that's Dr. Palmer to the left.
Yeah.
In the center. He's really a classics professor, just like Dr. Bocage. And I remember Dr. Houchins talked about him a lot. Frank Snowden, do you remember him? Anybody else?
Yeah. Oh, but he was more in business, wasn't he?
No, he taught mythology and blacks in antiquity and stuff like that, I think.
Well, I know he taught real estate out of the School of Business.
Well, I never had him as a professor, but I really got these pictures out the yearbook of my freshman year at Howard, 1975-76. Now to the right, who is the professor?
Charles Betsy.
Betsy.
Yeah, Charles Betsy. Okay, do you know these professors? To the left.
Dr. Bocage.
Yeah.
Dr. Bocage.
And that's the former dean, the other one.
Dean who? Linda knows.
From the math department.
Dean Donaldson.
Yeah, that's Dean Donaldson as a young man.
Right.
Okay. And this is the economics club. This is the pre-Abraham Harris Economic Society. We didn't know, we was not called Abraham Harris back in the day. So we were just economics club. So what is HOODA? Our mission is to support and give advice to the faculty and the students of the Howard University Economics Department. We have our president is myself, vice president is Dr. Charles Thorpe. We don't have a secretary, it's vacant. Our treasurer is Ms. Patricia Smith. Our awards chairperson is Dr. I.G. Dia. I know I'm gonna kill your name. Let's see, who am I missing? Don't want to miss nobody. But we have a core group of people, and I have a picture of them coming up. And of course, we give out several awards, and we have a lot of accomplishments. Okay, my cause is to ask you to become a member for those who are in the master's program, or in the PhD program, and you've gotten some degree already at Howard University. You're welcome to join us today. Become a part of a global professional network, and I mean, we're all over the world. You can keep up with your professors. That's the one question I always get. Hey, what's going on with our department? And what about Professor so-and-so? Our department and old college friends. And you have an opportunity, I think is the last one is an opportunity to invest in our emerging economies. And this is our core group. It's not everybody because everybody couldn't make it that day, but here we are in our Howard University Blue. And so, hey, this is the group that's here in Washington, D.C. And you can't do anything without them. So Patricia Smith is to the left, far left. It's myself, then Linda's in the back, Doris Newton in the white jacket, Charles Thorpe is in the back, the only male in here. His wife is up front in the blue, and then Dr. Hull, Sandra Hull, is peeping out to the right. And this is us at that 10-year anniversary boat ride. I'm proud to say that next year we'll be 25 years old, so we've been going strong. And this is some of the stuff. I'm going to go through these real fast because I know that the hour is late. But we attend the ASS conferences like this past year. I mean, this in January was in San Francisco. Next year we'll be back in Philadelphia. So we want to have a full press. We want to have a lot of people there, including the department too, by the way. We do our endow loan and scholarship funds. The first one is Dr. Jean-Louis Ducamo-Bocage. He taught the history of economic thought for all the graduate students, and he was a beloved professor. And then Dr. Ara Houchins, he was a beloved professor as well. And this is the way to give to Howard University, but specifically our Endow Fund. So if you can just copy down this link, please. Just remember giving.howard.edu. And we just want to quickly go through these, and we just want to remember Dr. Palmer. He was our former chairperson. He retired, but now he's deceased. The reason why we remember him because he was the chairperson sitting in the chair when HUDA was formed. And this is him at his, I think it's at his retirement ceremony. That's definitely the retirement ceremony in the end. And some of the faculty. This is a different event now, different event. And you see Dr. Andrew Bremers at the front, and we got Dr. Hunt to the far left, and we have Dr. Mike Donald, Dr. Spriggs, Dr. Linda, former husband, and Dr. Palmer.
That's funny.
Oh, and this is a really, really, really early picture with Dr. Palmer when we first got started. He had instituted a prize called the Chairman Prize, and we need to really bring that back. And this is for Dr. Spriggs. He's the really one that got us involved with, giving out a lot of awards and supporting the NEA and the ASSA. And this is when he first came to Howard University, and Hooters gave him a welcome to Howard University reception. Hey, we haven't seen Ab Willie in a long time. And here's another, we've seen this picture before. Oh, sorry. We got his name, Mr. Kareem Rashid. And this is Dr. Spriggs, Dr. Flowers, and Dr. Stiglitz. I love this picture. I love the famous Black economists, and two of them were associated, was right there in Howard University, Dr. Betsy and Dr. Spriggs. The gentleman to the left is Dr. Bernie, what's his last name? Anderson?
Anderson.
Hey, Richard Bernard.
Anderson.
Anderson.
You say Anderson or Henderson?
Anderson.
Anderson. And then the gentleman in the center he was running the Federal Reserve when they had the 9/11 attack. Is his name up down here?
Yeah.
Roger Ferguson.
Roger Ferguson, Dr. Ferguson. And this is the faculty. We want to keep our faculty uplifted. And you can see there's a lot of new faces there, but Emily Blank, you see her to the front, she recently retired. I was a grad assistant when she came to Howard University back in the day. Okay, this is my last slide. And please, but those, hey, your money will be well spent, well served if you join Huda today. And I want to thank everyone for their time. I know I breezed through it at the end, but this is really dear to my heart. I love the department. I love Howard University. And I just love being here, really. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Hazel, and all the work that Huda does. And so we're going to end with words from the Director of Undergraduate Studies, Dr. Dennis Baglin. Dennis.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I do hope that you can hear me well. My name is Dennis Bagman. I am the Director of Undergraduate Studies in the Department of Economics. First of all, I would like to thank Dean Williams for her remarks tonight. Next, I would like to thank our keynote speaker, Dr. Patrick Mason. Dr. Mason's contributions to the profession, from his extensive research to his leadership roles in advancing diversity within economics, exemplify both academic excellence and the deep commitment to equity. We are honored to have him share his insights with us today. Finally, I would like to thank the organizers, Harvard University Department of Economics Alumni Association, for organizing this event, the Department of Economics faculty, Harvard Department of Economics alumni, and our valuable graduate and undergraduate students for their participation. Finally, I would like to congratulate our students who are graduating this year. I wish you the best as you embark on the next chapter of your life. I would like to remind you that the Department of Economics faculty are not graduating. You know where to find us if you need anything. We'll be more than happy to support you in any way we can. Thank you. Have a great night.